The superhero team-up is one of the most important storytelling structures in all of comics. It is the foundation of many key franchises and has influenced the way many characters are represented in other forms of media. Books like The Brave and the Bold set the bar for what fans can expect when they see two of their favorite characters meet for the first time. But while the original series is remembered well for blazing a trail through the comic book industry, the 2007 iteration of the title is often wrongfully overlooked. Spearheaded by industry icons Mark Waid and George Perez, the book was a loving homage to the Silver Age of comics, and also successfully explored the tapestry of the DC universe during one of its most turbulent times. Unfortunately, problems behind the scenes changed the course of the series, leading it to become as antiquated as the books it was trying to emulate. Now, over 10 years later, The Brave and the Bold is in many ways a cautionary tale of what happens when you miss the forest for the trees. Yet despite this cruel fate, it is also a reminder of the creative potential in team-ups and the unique character dynamics that tie together the DC universe. Back in the old days, DC's publishing line was filled with anthology titles that housed multiple characters under one title. The idea is that readers would be drawn in by the main hook of the series, such as Superman in Action Comics or Batman in Detective Comics, and then they'd stick around for the other stories as well. The Brave and the Bold followed in this great tradition, debuting in 1955 with a rotating cast of characters, including the Silent Knight, the Viking Prince, the Golden Gladiator, and Robin Hood. What gets me is that DC already had Green Arrow, so somebody had the bright idea to have Green Arrow and Robin Hood stories running at the same time. Eventually, DC experimented with the format of the series more, creating the original Suicide Squad as well as the Justice League of America and eventually the Teen Titans. DC saw that using the title to team up a number of their characters in additional stories outside of their main series was a draw in itself, and that these new ideas could then be turned into additional books. After all, it worked for the Teen Titans and the Justice League. Soon, the format for The Brave and the Bold was permanently changed to feature different heroes teaming up in every issue, but this was quickly amended to be Batman-centric team-up stories by the late 1960s. This change was made to capitalize on the renewed interest in the Caped Crusader, whose new TV show was causing a surge in comic book sales. With thousands of eyes tuning into the adventures of Burt Ward and Adam West, children couldn't get enough Bat content and swarmed local stores for more comics. Batman and Detective Comics quickly climbed the sales charts, making more money for DC, and for a publisher in the 1960s, the only thing better than money was more money, so The Brave and the Bold effectively became the third Batman book. This approach also worked as a great marketing opportunity for other characters and titles in DC's pantheon of heroes. You buy the book for Batman, and then hopefully you fall in love with a guest star, and then you go buy their book too. It's like a variety show, but in comic book form. The Brave and the Bold was a mainstay of DC's publishing line for over a decade under this format, before it was eventually canceled at issue number 200 in 1983. In the years that followed, The Brave and the Bold was brought back briefly on two different occasions, each time as a limited series. In 1991, Mike Grell, Mike Barron, and Shea Antan-Pensa brought together The Butcher, The Question, and Green Arrow in a 6-issue tale that built off of the Butcher limited series, as well as Grell's work on the ongoing Green Arrow title. Later, a 1999 series by Mark Waid, Tom Peyer, and Barry Kitson united the Silver Age versions of The Flash and Green Lantern for a throwback tale, set outside of the then present-day DC continuity. Waid was coming up on the end of his run on The Flash, so this miniseries was a natural extension of that work. Additionally, the miniseries functioned as a follow-up to the previously released JLA Year 1, also featuring Waid and Kitson, so it had a lot of momentum going into it and sold quite well. Despite this, DC didn't really see any value in bringing back The Brave and the Bold as a proper ongoing series at that time. It would take years of convincing from some of DC's marquee creators to finally convince the publisher to bring it back as a proper ongoing series. At San Diego Comic-Con 2005, DC Comics announced that they had come to terms with a new exclusive contract for writer Mark Waid. One of the conditions of said deal was that Wade would get to write an ongoing version of The Brave and the Bold, so he could play with all of the goodies in DC's chest of toys. The book was intended as a journeyman's tour through the new DC universe in the wake of Infinite Crisis and the weekly series 52. Joining Wade was legendary artist George Perez, who was looking for a new challenge hot on the heels of helping bring Infinite Crisis to its conclusion, as well as the landmark JLA Avengers crossover series before it. In February 2007, The Brave and the Bold returned. To honor the legacy of the title, Batman was placed front and center for the first issue, teaming up with Green Lantern, whose book was amongst the highest-selling DC titles of the time. Instead of being completely episodic, like the original series, this new version of The Brave and the Bold instead handed off plot threads from each issue to the next issue's cast of characters, continuing the ongoing story. Batman needed help on a case from Green Lantern, who then followed a crook into space, bringing along Supergirl. Then, Batman and Blue Beetle teamed up while Lobo met up with Supergirl. Next, the Legion of Superheroes got wrapped up in the growing conflict, while Green Lantern reunited with Batman. This round-robin approach to juggling characters utilized their distinct voices and their relationships while also building up the conflict of the scale very effectively. It felt like everything that the heroes were enduring held dire consequences for the entire DC universe. After a year of continuously handing off various plot threads in the pages of The Brave and the Bold, Wade and new series artist Jerry Ordway wrapped up the conflict in epic fashion in the 12th issue of the series. Ordway was then followed by artist Scott Collins, who handled the next few issues with Superman, Green Arrow, Nightwing, and more. But Wade's run didn't last much longer, as ongoing issues behind the scenes caused him to leave DC Comics entirely, while editorial had to figure out a new approach to the series. The Brave and the Bold was restructured to feature both a rotating cast of characters and a rotating cast of creators, while the powers that be looked for a suitable replacement for Wade. Raven, the Phantom Stranger, Booster Gold, and some of the heroes from the Milestone Comics imprint were featured in the series during this time, normally in 1 or 2 part stories. After roughly a year of existing like this, DC found a new creative team to steer the future of the series in the form of writer J. Michael Straczynski and artist Jesus Saiz. JMS and Saiz took over the series with issue number 27, and the book was quickly labeled as Lost Stories of Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. Their run focused on stories that took place outside of the time that they were published, but were still considered in continuity. Some issues took place after very specific stories, while other ones just fit into the broad ether of whenever. JMS and Saiz also used a lot of Silver Age characters like Dial H for Hero, the Legion of Substitute Heroes, and the Inferior Five. But while well received by many critics of the time, the writing was already on the wall for the series. In July 2010, The Brave and the Bold was abruptly cancelled with issue number 35, while the previously announced issue number 36 was never brought to print. The first issue of The Brave and the Bold sold just over 92,000 copies in February 2007. It was the highest-selling title for DC Comics that month, aside from the latest issues of 52 Injustice, which were heavily promoted top-tier books. As I've said before, most books gradually lose sales over time, hopefully finding their footing and stabilizing shortly after launching. Unfortunately for The Brave and the Bold, the book lost sales at a rapid rate and never really stopped. In fact, the only time that the sales went up was when JMS and Saiz joined the title. So what does that mean? Well, The Brave and the Bold debuted with strong sales, probably due to the creators involved as well as the characters featured, only to have a substantial drop between issues number 1 and 2. Now, if you ask Mark Waid, this was partially due to many reviewers at the time who called the series fun. In 2007, successful books weren't exactly known for being fun. DC was coming off of the success of the Ultra Grim Identity Crisis and Infinite Crisis. Even brighter titles like Green Lantern and Supergirl had a lot of very dark themes and plot points. The Brave and the Bold had Batman fusing with a robot body, a book that recorded all of time, and, Green Lantern flirting with Supergirl. Yikes! People love to complain about ultra serious, grim, dark comic books, but then they go out and they buy them because they feel like they have consequences for the characters involved. A book like The Brave and the Bold, though? It didn't really have that angle. On top of that, the book launched with a staggered shipping schedule, something that was supposed to allow for George Perez to keep up with the series. The book was published for 3 months, took a month off, continued for another 3 months, took a month off, and so on. Perez is genuinely one of the greatest comic book artists of all time, but all books suffer when delays become a factor, even scheduled ones. Add to this that he left after 10 issues and then Wade after 16, and 2 of the biggest reasons to buy the series were gone. With Wade out the door, The Brave and the Bold really lost its core identity. It was handed off to different creative teams and used as an attempted revitalization of the Milestone Comics property, best known for characters like Static. These decisions were all very short term, and the sales show that readers weren't interested in waiting around for DC to figure out what to do with the book. After all, DC had only really brought it back for Wade and Perez to have a way to play with different characters. There weren't any signs that they knew what to do with the book beyond that. Many of the stories published after Wade's departure were evergreen and inconsequential, so when readers put down the comic, it was almost as if nothing had happened. There were also conflicting reports about what the future of the title held, with artist Brent Anderson working on a 2-part story with writer Marv Wolfman that was ultimately replaced by a completely different adventure instead. That team-up between Plastic Man and Green Lantern was eventually used as a double-sized one-shot issue months later, without the Brave and the Bold moniker, and that shows how loose-fitting that title became for the stories within. Changes are expected from time to time in the fast-paced world of publishing, but too many changes in too small of a period of time can rattle readers' confidence that a series is worth their money. When J. Michael Straczynski and Jesus Saiz came onto The Brave and the Bold, they helped stabilize the series and resuscitate it from the brink of death. Sales briefly went up by over 33%, and the book got great critical buzz. JMS was coming off of his red-hot run on Thor over at Marvel, so his name brought a lot of attention to the comic. Even then, the book didn't feel like it had a clear direction. At one point, JMS was supposed to use The Brave and the Bold to help launch the Red Circle line of titles, a property that DC was licensing from Archie Comics, but that got thrown out before it ever began. When the book's stories were labeled Lost Stories of Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, the series appeared to stop trying to appeal to modern readers, instead favoring fans who wanted a slice of yesteryear. This was in direct conflict with what readers had grown to expect from The Brave and the Bold at this point, and ultimately, it didn't help save it either. The book was quietly cancelled shortly after, going out with a whimper despite the critical acclaim. As far as I'm concerned, The Brave and the Bold represents the manifestation of nostalgia for DC Comics, but nostalgia is different for different people, which is where the structure of the series often has problems. The 2007 iteration of the title aimed to tap into the hearts of fans who had grown up on the original series and seemed like it was trying to make them feel the same magic that they had as kids. Wade had already made magnificent comics that paid tribute to the Silver Age, like his prior Flash and Green Lantern Brave and the Bold series, JLA Year 1, and a series of one-shots literally called The Silver Age. The ongoing Brave and the Bold series emulated this nostalgia for a bygone era while still pushing things forward, mixing new characters with old to create a cohesion to the DC universe. It took a familiar format and applied it to newer ideas to get the best of both worlds. Even when Wade left, many of the fill-in creators tried to use the classic formula to spotlight new heroes and properties, like the aforementioned attempted Milestone relaunch. This spoke to the spirit of creativity the original series had achieved, and for what it's worth, I applaud the creators and editorial for doing that, because it is easy to rely on familiar stories instead. See, the allure of nostalgia was too much to resist for JMS, who seemed to use it as a crutch for his tenure on the title. In my opinion, the J. Michael Straczynski and Jesus Saiz run on The Brave and the Bold was the bizarre doppelganger to the work of Wade, Perez, Ordway, and Collins. Where Wade's tenure on the series was bright and fast and filled with adventure, the majority of JMS's time on the series was grounded in moral platitudes. I do not think it is an objectively bad book, but I do think that at times it comes off as very disenchanted with the bright-eyed optimism of the Silver Age, instead focusing on themes like death, corruption, and dread. These are important themes to explore, but it was very jarring given what readers had grown to expect from the previous 26 issues. To that point, The Brave and the Bold was about bombastic action, larger-than-life villains, and crazy concepts only capable of being conveyed in comics. Many creators used the book to create a sense of fun, but JMS used the series to dissect DC's different characters. Arguably, the best case of this was issue number 28, which was nominated for an Eisner Award for Best One-Shot. That issue sees Barry Allen travel through time to team up with the Blackhawks during World War II. It is a small, intimate story that focuses on if killing to survive makes you a bad person and the complicated decisions that have to be made during war. The issue tries to accomplish a lot in its runtime and mostly succeeds, while also reading as a tribute to an era long gone. In contrast, issue 29 of the series is a bitter, disjointed mess. In that tale, Brother Power the Geek, an obscure 60s character, finds himself resurrected in the modern era, and Batman likens him to Frankenstein's monster, a being of innocence in a harsh world. After an issue filled with flashbacks to the 60s, juxtaposed with vague reflections on the present day, the closing pages of the issue feature Brother Power the Geek preaching to Batman about the ways in which the times have changed for the worst. Ultimately, Brother Power concludes that things were better back in his day, and if this is the way of the world, then he truly no longer has a place in it, all before being consumed by a raging inferno. To me, this comic is the embodiment of the old man yells at a cloud meme. It yearns for an out-of-reach past and relies so heavily on nostalgia that it discards the modern era. I don't know if the change in tone for the series came from the powers that be at DC, or from JMS himself, who had recently been creatively stifled by a series of negative experiences at Marvel. Regardless, the result is that the book feels very jaded. It's almost as if the comic itself didn't want to be published. I feel like I'm being judged for reading it, and it doesn't leave me yearning for more. With that in mind, I think it's the JMS run that distills so perfectly the complicated reverence The Brave and the Bold has in the hearts of many fans. In the quest to capture the magic of years past, the series can easily forsake the modern day. It has the potential to push things forward, but a misunderstanding of the book's history can easily lead to lingering on what once was but cannot be reclaimed. Without a firm vision for how to use the series to propel stories forward, The Brave and the Bold becomes this catch-22 of nostalgia. Fans love it because it reminds them of their childhood, but longing for the past can easily come off as, well, a little sad sometimes. But The Brave and the Bold embodies endless possibilities for brand new stories, while it is itself in many ways a relic of the past. For what it's worth, I think Mark Waid understood how to use the format to tell new stories while honoring the legacy of the title. But I don't think that JMS did. You can feel free to disagree with that. So where does that leave us with The Brave and the Bold? Is the series doomed to languish in obscurity, existing only as a figment of the past? Is it bad to yearn for the stories of our childhood? Has the market grown tired of nostalgia? I'd say no, to all of the above. In fact, in recent years, DC has shown an increasing ability to embrace the absurd, one of the marquee elements of Silver Age stories. For every Doomsday Clock and Heroes in Crisis, we have Milk Wars and Drowned Earth. In many ways, the market is healthier now than it has been in years for DC, with books like Jimmy Olsen, The Wonder Twins, and Martian Manhunter exploring the weirdest elements comics have to offer. In their own ways, these series are also homages to the Silver Age of comics and show that it is possible to recapture the childlike magic we yearn to have in our lives. I'm not saying DC is perfect, because they're not, but the company has made a habit of taking risks in the last few years with unique titles, much to the benefit of their readers. The Brave and the Bold is not beholden to any specific means of telling stories. What I've tried to do here is point out some patterns and draw conclusions from them, but that does not mean that history has to repeat itself. In fact, in 2018, DC brought back a version of The Brave and the Bold, featuring Batman and Wonder Woman in a 6-issue story by Liam Sharp. It detailed an adventure between Batman and Wonder Woman that had them fighting against and alongside Celtic gods. It was unlike anything I've seen tackled in The Brave and the Bold before, and that was the beauty of it. It harnessed the spirit of the series, but had its own unique creative voice that was unlike anything else at the time. It was a great way to pay tribute to the series and showed that all it takes for something to come back is for somebody to have a bold idea and for an editor to be brave enough to approve it. What do I want to see from the future of The Brave and the Bold? Honestly, I have no idea, because I've already gotten exactly what I wanted. Issue 15 of the 2007 series, featuring Deadman, Nightwing, Hawkman, and Green Arrow teaming up in an adventure by Mark Waid and Scott Collins, is basically a perfect comic for me. I was years old, and it was my introduction to the series, but beyond that, it helped me fall in love with the art of Scott Collins, the comic book exploits of Dick Grayson, and the possibilities of an interconnected DC universe. It blew my mind, because I was still familiarizing myself with comics, and I'll always appreciate that. But for somebody new reading today, they're going to fall in love with an entirely different kind of adventure. And to me, that's the wonder of The Brave and the Bold. You never know exactly what you're going to get. But as long as the series is pushing boundaries while using the tried and tested method of teaming up some unexpected characters, I'm along for the ride. Ultimately, the tale of the 2007 The Brave and the Bold series is a tad bittersweet. Brought to life as a way to explore the DC universe, conflict behind the scenes prevented the series from ever fully realizing its potential. What was originally meant to pioneer new frontiers became too reliant on familiar tropes, ultimately becoming as outdated as the stories it tried to honor. But upon reflection, we can appreciate how important the connective tissue that holds together the DC universe is, and how valuable a book like The Brave and the Bold can be. With the world more divided than ever before and DC turning a corner in its history once more, now is the perfect time to bring people together through the pages of The Brave and the Bold. At its worst, the series caters to the whims of nostalgia, forsaking the new in favor of the old. But at its best, The Brave and the Bold represents the purest aspects of shared continuity, progressive storytelling, and the endless potential found within the pages of a comic book. So that's it! Tell me, are you a fan of The Brave and the Bold? What is your favorite comic book, superhero, team-up, adventure, extravaganza thing? Let me know in the comment section below. We could talk about some of these great team-up adventures because I love me a good team-up story. If you liked this video, please press the like button. It would mean a lot to me and my self-esteem. And if you are so inclined, you can subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with new videos when I put them out into the world. Thank you for watching this video. It means a lot to me. It was a lot of work and it was really tough at times, and I just really appreciate that you took the time out of your day to check out my video. That means a lot to me. And thank you as well to Comichron.com, IGN.com, comicbookresources.com, and a lot of DC Comics, because that's what makes this video possible. Really, thank you so much to DC for just making some great comics that I could dive into and enjoy. If you are interested, you can follow me personally across social media at A White Cuban, and you can keep up to date with whatever comics I'm reading or whatever is going on in my day-to-day life. You know, the huge. And once again, seriously, thank you so much for checking out this video. It means a lot to me, and I'm really thankful to be able to put this out there and have people watch me and judge me. It's a great feeling. It really makes the day tons of fun. But seriously, thank you so much for checking out this video, and keep an eye out because I'm going to be dropping some new videos soon, and I'm very excited for them. So thanks. Yikes. 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 Yikes.